Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 8 talking about the application start screen. The one I have up is for Office 2010 and Word, so I'm going to do an Excel version of this. So it's essentially the same thing. Now notice Excel's not on, well yes it is, okay, on my list here, and whammo. If you had not had that, then you would have had a screen that where the first choice was to create a blank worksheet. In my case, it starts with a blank worksheet. Okay, so I don't think that's too much of a jarring thing. Starting Excel and creating a blank worksheet takes 2 clicks. You know, in the other version, you fire it up, you come to the application start. The first square on the right-hand side is create a blank worksheet. You click on that, and then it looks practically identical to what we're looking at now. On page 11, they talk about some of just the fundamental operations of Windows, and again, this is kind of baby steps. But if you want to be able to switch between, you know, I've got my Microsoft Excel gone full screen. I guess we'll demo that. I mean, again, this is kind of baby steps. This is the minimize button, and it makes the thing go away and minimize to the taskbar down here. I can click on it to restore it. This little doodad right here tells me whether or not I want it to go full screen or not. And so this kind of toggles between the two. And when you have it not full screen, well then you can move it around. And so to move it, I actually have to have my cursor somewhere inside this title bar area, and I hold the mouse down and I can move things around. I can also resize it. I can, you know, make it, grab this little corner now and stretch it out. And so anyway, toggling back and forth between full screen and not full screen. I think everyone kind of sort of knows what the red X in their corner does, but if you click on that, it'll close your application. Okay, if you're kind of in full screen mode, maybe you have another application up there, and you want to be able to get to it, but you don't want to have to toggle back to the not full screen and push back and forth. So there's a keyboard thing called Alt-Tab. So I'm holding the Alt key down with one finger and hitting the Tab key. And what this does is allow me to switch back and forth between, it's almost the same as me just clicking here. Except here I can do more. I can go, you know, there's I can even go back to the desktop where everything's hidden. So Alt-Tab allows me to switch back and forth between. So right now I have essentially 4 applications running. I have, you know, Internet Explorer pointing to that website. I have an Excel workbook. I have the photo viewer, and I have the desktop. So just Alt-Tab allows me to kind of pop around to be able to see things. Okay. On page 12, they talk about more about the application window. Now, let's say that you're working on a document, and it just this ribbon maybe is consuming an awful lot of space. The technique to make the ribbon go away is a little different. There's a little caret thing, a little up arrow thing, and this is the guy that makes the ribbon kind of go away. In the other version, there's actually a little square with a line across the top, and it kind of makes it look like a ribbon. I'll tell you what I do is, this is kind of cool. I do Control F1, all right, because I'm a keyboard kind of guy, and Control F1 works in both versions. It works in the 2010 version and the 2013 version. So if you just remember Control F1, you don't have to think about it. Okay. Zooming in. Almost all of these applications have a zoom thing. And you could just manually use this little slide bar to kind of slide things over and make them bigger. Or you could just use plus, and it kind of goes up by like 10% at a time, which is kind of cool. If you don't like that, there's another way you can change the zoom. I'm going to go to where the view is here, and then I'm going to hit this zoom button. Okay, and the zoom button basically brings up a whole new doodad that says, one of the ones I like is the one called the fit the selection. So for example, let's say, I guess I'll have to put some stuff in here to make this make any sense. So I'm just going to put some junk. Okay, and don't worry about how I'm doing what I'm doing, because we're going to talk about that in a great deal. Okay, so I have some stuff now. And I want to zoom directly to that and make that kind of fit. So one of the ones I like is you highlight. Now remember, this is kind of mouse skills. I just click on one of the cells, hold the button, the normal left mouse button down, and drag until I got everything all selected. And then I'm going to hit this thing called zoom to selection. So that it fixes it so that this thing is maximum zoom, being able to see everything that I want. So zoom is pretty cool. I like that. Okay. The next thing to talk about is scrolling. So I've zoomed to something and maybe I've zoomed too much. And so, well, now I can't see it all. Well, then you have to use the scroll bars. And so the scroll bars are either, the vertical scroll bars over here or the horizontal scroll bars if it had gone that far. Okay, and I think everyone pretty much well knows how that works. At least I hope so. Okay. The next thing to talk about on page 15 is kind of comparing all of the ribbons from all of the Microsoft Microsoft products. So there's a picture here, and this shows essentially the 2013 version, but it's okay. It's really close. And the top one is Word, and the next one is Excel, the next one is Access, the next one is PowerPoint. And so this is kind of the way it looks. And you may look at this for just a minute and go, there's some consistencies here, which is actually a pretty good thing. One thing I noticed pretty cool is the ribbons are color-coded. See how the color for the word file, the word file is always the first tab in our ribbon, but they're color-coded, and it's the same color as the icon. So Microsoft Word has always had a blue icon, and Excel has always had a green icon. And so another thing, if you're just flipping around between documents, one of the visual cues on what document you have is this little color-coded thing that matches the color of the icon. I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, they all have a file, and file is called the backstage. Hey, I don't know who comes up with these things, but that's what it's called. It's called the backstage. They all have a home, which pretty much has, paste and the font doodad and a few other odds and ends, depending on what product you're in. And after that, most of them have insert, most of them have some sort of a design and layout, and just depends. From there on, it kind of gets dependent on what you're trying to do. Okay, so there is some consistencies between all these kind of guys. The only real difference is this backstage thing is kind of the default in the 2013, that start application screen, and we don't have that on ours. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is just a little bit of mouse skills, and once again, just don't roll your eyes, but trust me, we have to go through baby steps. So, here is, Mary had a little lamb. Okay, now if I wanted to go in there and select a particular word, there's a keyboard way of doing it. There's lots of ways of doing it. I'm just going to use my mouse, and I'm just going to highlight this little. So once again, I just put the cursor. Now, first of all, there's two cursors. Okay, there's what they call the I-beam cursor, which is the guy that's moving around. That's the I-beam, and then they have this flashing guy. So this is kind of like my pointer. Now watch what happens when I move it outside of the page margin. So you turn it into an arrow, but if I move it inside the page margin, then it turns into a little I-beam. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay, this one stays the same. So I want to highlight the word little, and I want to change, let's say, to make that bold. Well, in the Home tab, there's this little toggle button, and toggle button means exactly what it sounds like. It means you press it once, it turns it on, and press it again, it turns it off. So on, off, on, off, on, off. Same old, same old. Italics is another one of those. So can you have it bold and italics at the same time? Well, of course you can. So you can go in there and turn things off. How about underline? Yep, you can have the underline and bold and italics all at the same time. Now some things aren't toggles. For example, color. If I wanted to change the color of this, well, what do you think the color thing would be here? Well, there's a letter A with a red thing on it. That sounds pretty good. Well, this is not a toggle. You click this, well, actually kind of sort of is, kind of. This one has a little down arrow here, and the down arrow is kind kind of just stuck off to the side there. Okay, so if I hit the down arrow, then I get to pick a color. I want it to be blue. Okay, so these guys didn't really have down arrows. The U one did. And you might think, why on earth would the underline have options? Well, do you want like underline to break at a word or not? So you can have all different kinds of underlines. Okay, so sorry if this is a little elementary, but yes, selecting things with a mouse, toggle buttons, these advanced buttons, where yes, it is a button, but it has a little down arrow doodad that allows you to go in and do stuff. So next thing we're going to talk about is just text alignment. So I'm going to align this, grab this whole thing, and see right now it is left aligned. Makes sense? So what do you think if when I hover over these things, I get a little help, a context help menu that comes up and says center. So yep, sure enough, it centers. How about left? Yay! How about full? Well, that don't do much more than just left. So left and right justification, things of that nature. Pretty simple stuff. I think if you've ever used Microsoft product at all, you're kind of familiar with at least this bottom row. Maybe the stuff at the top may be a little weird, but the bottom row you probably kind of know some. Okay. Whew. Let's talk about keyboard shortcuts. I like keyboard shortcuts. You're not required to use keyboard shortcuts, but I use Control-C a lot. I go in here and do Control-C to make a copy of something. And then Control-V is in Victor to do paste. Cool. And you can, once you've got it in your, it's called the copy buffer, I can do paste several times. Is that pretty cool? Now let's say I wanted to highlight everything on the page to copy again. Well, I could do the same thing with the mouse, right? And drag all these guys and grab them all. That's one way. The other way is Control-A. Control-A for all. Control-A. And it's just a quick way of selecting everything. Now, that might not be what you want, but in this particular case, I'm going to say copy, and then go down to here and do paste, and this time it produced me a bunch of these guys. So, Control-C, Control-V, Control-A. Now, there's tons of others. You know, in fact, whenever you hover over one of these things, it'll tell you. Like, this one is Control-E. Okay, I don't use that one, but hey, this one is Control-R for right. I don't use that one either. But so I'm not asking you to memorize a bunch of keystrokes. I'm just telling you that the ones that I'm going to use in class, I'm going to do Control-C, Control-V. Okay, so if I'm doing it, you might want to know what all that means. Okay, on page 20, they're talking about Excel. A little small demo. I'm going to say no. I don't want to do that. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to get the zoom back to normal. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. So one of the things they talk about is the format dialog. So when you're poking around here, one of the things I'm gonna have to get back to the Home tab to be able to do what we're talking about, because we temporarily went to the View tab. Remember, because we were doing zooming, it doesn't automatically go back. So I'm gonna go back to the Home tab, and one of the things you can do is change the format of something. So if you're following along in the book, they ask you to insert a graphic, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to find a spot to put this. I'm just going to over here someplace, and I want to insert a graphic. Okay, so where do you think I would do an insert? Like, maybe the Insert tab at the top? Yeah, that'd be a good place to do an insert, wouldn't it? And then what am I inserting? Am I inserting a table, some clip art, all this other junk? No. I'm just inserting a picture. That's it. No big deal. So I click on that, and it pops me up a dialog. And the dialog comes up and basically says, you know, answer this and then move on, essentially. That's kind of a dumb way of looking at it. Okay, so what I have is this little logo from the student data files. So I hit the button, and presto changeo, I have a cool graphic now. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.